Hi, I'm Tom Bradford. In this live stream, in which you can ask questions at the end, I'm going to look at whether an entrepreneurial team is best for the startup visa or innovator visa, or whether you should start your own business with a 100% owned business, all controlled by you, or whether you should invest into and co-found a business with a British entrepreneur. These broadly are three options which are permissible under these visa routes. You can't invest into a business or company that's already trading, but you can co-found a business with a British entrepreneur, or for that matter, with another non-EU entrepreneur, for example, who's also applying for a visa. I'm assisting, among other people, an entrepreneurial team who are coming here to build a scalable business in the gaming sector, for example. Now, one of the things you've got to be sure of if you're applying with someone else who also requires a visa under this route is you've got to each meet the settlement criteria. Let's remind ourselves of what they are. So, most of my clients are going for this first one, that at least 50,000 has been invested into the business and actively spent furthering the business plan assessed in the applicant's previous endorsement. So that for most people will not be an issue. What I do with my clients is set out the boundaries of the business plan, think ahead in terms of what is going to be the element in which there's going to be an investment to meet the qualifying investment criterion. What 50,000 tranche is going to be used to say, look, this, say, cost on app development, this ad spend, this overhead is part of the qualifying investment. But that's more or less straightforward. Now, in that case, more than one person can rely on it. So two people can rely on it, and then they've got to show that there's a qualifying £100,000 of investment. However, the others are less straightforward because you as a team can't both rely on one. Let's look at the next one. For example, the number of businesses customers has at least doubled within the most recent 3 years. You can't both rely on that. Only one person can rely on that. And since you've each got to satisfy two criteria, only one of you can do that as an entrepreneurial team. Now, the other person would have to go for one of the others. This is the one that's most common. The business is engaged in significant research and development activity and has applied for intellectual property protection in the UK. Now, that's more straightforward because in many cases there's a software element to these businesses. In not all cases, though. I can give you some examples where they're not software related businesses. But registering a design is one way of protecting your intellectual property, which is different from applying for a patent. In most cases, you can't patent software. And so this would be registering a design, which my team can do in 2 or 3 weeks. Having copyright, which can arise by operation of law automatically, really doesn't qualify under this route. Likewise, there are other forms of intellectual property protection. Trademarks, for example, would not necessarily qualify. Registering a design would, as I say, you don't need to go for a patent. Applying for a patent would qualify, but software generally can't be patented. Now, if you look at, one person can invest the 50,000 and rely on the intellectual property requirement, but the other person would have to invest the 50,000 and then rely on one of these others. Either they've doubled their customers, or let's have a look at the others. The business has generated a minimum annual revenue of 1 million in the last full year covered by its accounts. The business is generating a minimum annual revenue of 500,000 in the last full year covered by its accounts, with at least 100,000 from exporting overseas. The business has created the equivalent of at least 10 full-time jobs for resident workers, or the business has created the equivalent of at least 5 full-time jobs for resident workers which have an average salary of at least $25,000 a year. That's gross pay excluding any expenses. I would suggest that in light of this, except where you're anticipating very significant revenues, it's generally better for many applicants to have their own 100% owned business they own and control. Now, the downside of that is to meet the innovation criterion, more work may be required.